Welcome back to another episode of the SoberFitGirl podcast. Today we're going to talk about defining our why. And this was actually the first assignment that I got and that we love to give in the SoberFitGirl program because it is basically us affirming why we're doing this. And I still look back at the answers to my questions when we look at each area of our life and what it would have looked like in a year from now, and 5 years from now, 10 years from now, if I kept drinking versus if I got sober. And it was very dark when I was thinking about what would happen if I kept drinking and what my life would turn into. So, when you did this yourself, Kat, what area of your life do you feel like was the scariest to look at?
So when we give the homework assignment, we you look at your life in 1, 5, and 10 years in each area of your life: finances, mental health, physical health, relationships, career. I mean, every single area. So when you write down in each area, what is your finances going to look like? What are your relationships going to look like? And when I did this, I got really scared. I got really scared because of my mental health. My mental health was the biggest reason I got sober. I didn't even care at that point in any other area of my life because your mental health comes first. If you don't have good mental health and you're closer, because from my experience, my drinking was so unpredictable and very scary that either one, I would have a drinking episode where something bad would happen, I die, or my mental health was so deteriorating that I wouldn't want to live anymore, to be completely honest. So when I wrote down the 1 in 5 years of what my mental health would look like, it was just, I probably wouldn't want to be here. When you do the define your why homework and you look at what your life will look like in 1, 5, and 10 years if you keep drinking. You also do the other side of it is what your life will look like in 1, 5, and 10 years if you stop drinking. From my experience, that one was very hard for me to do because I didn't know what my life would look like sober, but I focused on what I didn't want anymore. And when you look at your define your why of what's going to happen in 1, 5, and 10 years, I don't want that. I don't want what my finances will look like in 5 years broke. I don't want what my relationships will look like in 5 years. Let's say as a romantic partner, no one would date me drinking. I would 100% lose my business if I kept drinking. My family relationships were already really hard. If I kept drinking, no chance. And the biggest one, like I said, is the mental health. It really scared me. And when we give this homework at Sober Fit Girl, it's not like we're trying to put fear in anyone's mind, but we're trying to get them into reality. And reality is that if I kept drinking, it was going to be really, really dark. And fear got me sober. I was so scared to see what would happen in 5 years if I kept drinking. So when I gave you that homework assignment, could you do the sober side?
I could just because I was sober for 6 months already, and I not fully because there's so much that has happened in my sobriety that I could not have even predicted. And I'm sure there's going to be more stuff that happens that I couldn't even predict now. So we're constantly evolving and growing in our sobriety, but I was able to have a little bit of an idea of the blessings that were coming in because I wasn't on day one. I was 6 months into it. And that actually got me even more motivated and inspired to keep going because I was already having like the wheels turning and I was seeing some shifts, all mostly in my mental health, which was the biggest area of my life, just like yours, that I was terrified to see what would happen if I kept drinking. Like I was losing it every single day, losing it. I felt like I was dying. And, I was just scared to keep going because I know that, there would be no 10 years. I could see what would happen in a year, like it would just fall apart completely. But like when it comes to my mental health, I couldn't even see beyond a year because it was just deteriorating so fast. And then in the 6 months that I was sober, I already saw such a significant improvement in my mental health and how I was handling things, and just what my day to day looked like. Yes, there was still anxiety. Yes, there was still hard feelings and shame and just a lot of heavy things coming up, but it wasn't debilitating to the point where I was just constantly thinking bad thoughts. And there was a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, I mention this all the time. I had no hope in anything ever getting better. There was no light at the end of the tunnel when I was drinking in any area of my life. And so mental health was definitely the biggest area that I started really knowing that if I kept drinking, it would be bad fast. Like I didn't even have to write anything for what would happen if I kept drinking in 5 to 10 years, because I don't know, I truly believe that I wouldn't be here in 5 to 10 years. And I know that that's dark and heavy, but that's just truly how fast things were deteriorating for me.
I can really relate to the 6 month mark. From my experience, at the 6 month mark, I could start to do my define my why on the sober side, because I was in that cycle for such a long time of drinking, and then drinking, and then playing catch up, and in that cycle of drink on the weekend and then make up for it during the week. Once I got to the 6 months, I said to myself, holy crap, I've accomplished more in 6 months than I have in 10 years of drinking. Savings, finances had made such a big difference. My fitness routine was so much easier to do. I had more consistency. My relationship with my family was getting slightly better. But the biggest thing was the difference in that 6 months in my sobriety to my drinking days in my first 6 months. Even though I was going through deep spiritual healing and the trauma work and all of that stuff, it's a different kind of pain. It's a different kind of hard, because I knew that there was a light at the end of the tunnel, that I saw healing happening, and I knew there was freedom. Whereas in my drinking days, there was no freedom in that area. I was just re traumatizing myself. So I can really relate to you in that 6 months. I started to see what the sober life would look like, and I wanted to keep chasing it. So for me, the biggest change I saw in the first 6 months was my mental health changing, as in, because I wasn't drinking, I didn't wake up with that shame and that anxiety. Did you feel like you saw a lot of change in your mental health in the first 6 months?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I didn't have panic attacks. Yes, I still had anxiety, but I wasn't having these insane panic attacks that I would get. And I was slowly becoming a little bit more hopeful in a lot of situations. And that's why mental health was the foundation, like the area in my life that once I saw improvement there, it really helped every other area. So for example, with my finances, I would say that was like my second in line of where things were getting really bad. Like I was very broke towards the end of my drinking. I was behind on rent. There was days I didn't even have money to get on the subway. Like I was literally collecting coins at home to try to get on the subway or to get myself a slice of pizza, because I had no, like, I was working a job, but I was so broke and spending, it's insane when I think back to like I was behind on rent. I was working over 40 hours a week, double shifts, trying to catch up on finances. But because I was so stressed and the only way that I knew how to cope was drinking, I would go and spend all of the money that I made on alcohol and going out. And I was constantly stuck in like a loop of trying to get myself out and overworking myself, but then I was drinking because I felt the burnout, I felt the stress from overworking myself. And so I think back, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I was already at my max capacity and I was making money. It's not like I wasn't making money. I was making money, but I was spending it on alcohol. I was spending it on going out, on stupid things. I wasn't paying my bills. And I fell really far behind. And then I had no idea where my money was going. In the 6 months that I got sober, I was able to save more money than I ever did. Like 6 months into my sobriety, I caught up on my rent. I had a Euro trip booked and I was able to afford that. I couldn't even afford rent, let alone a trip or anything nice for myself. I started seeing money in my savings because, like I said, it's not that I wasn't making money or I didn't have a job. I was making money, but I was blowing all of that money on drinking and on everything that came with drinking. And I wasn't prioritizing the things I needed to financially, which would always have me playing catch up, and I was never catching up. And in 6 months, I started seeing improvement and money in my account and everything paid. And it's just crazy. So, I mean, I was also able to see what my life could look like financially if because I already saw such improvement in the 6 months. Um, Same with, I mean, family relationships got better. I was able to see more hope there. Friendships, the friends that I, you know, really cared about, they were there. We deepened our friendship. So I saw improvement there. Um, Love, not so much. Not so much on the love. I had no idea what was going to happen with love because that was one area that took a long time for me to start seeing things improving. I made a lot more mistakes and I touched the stove a lot in my sobriety with that. However, I knew that if I kept drinking, I would never find my person. I would end up with somebody that is absolutely horrible and or alone. I just knew, and not working on myself too. So, like, also, I just want to say that, like, the idea of being alone when I was drinking was terrifying versus the idea of being alone when I got comfortable in sobriety. It it wasn't terrifying. Like, I because I started building that confidence too. So, I think that no matter where you are in your journey, there's you're gonna start seeing things in different areas at different times. So, for example, somebody might come in and they might not see any progress in their love life for years. They might not be able to save as much money as they want for years. However, you're seeing improvement. And that's why I love that we look 1 year into it, 5 years into it, and 10 years into it too. Because it goes back to like what is what is calling our attention now. And for me, at every point in my sobriety, I feel like different areas of my life called for attention at that specific time. So when you think about your journey, what do you think that what area of your life called focus to it first, and then kind of how did it change throughout your sobriety? So what area do you feel like you saw the most improvement in your sobriety right away?
I mean, the most important thing was my mental health. So that was the most important thing. And then I knew if I could work on my mental health, I would create space. After that, like, I finances were a huge thing for me because in my drinking days, previous to starting SoberFitGirl or any of my own personal businesses, I relied on my partner for my finances. And I didn't like that. I didn't like to be dependent on someone else for my finances. So, the thing with finances that I like to think of in my sober journey is time equals money. Time equals momentum in your career. Time equals putting the energy towards, let's say, and putting your interview or putting your applications out there for interviewing. So if you are spending, let's say you hate your career, let's say you hate your career and you want to make that change, but you're drunk and hungover all the time, how can you put time into creating a resume, to put out applications, to get an interview? For me personally, I saw the opportunity cost of drinking was my fitness career couldn't grow. There couldn't be momentum because I spent so much time in a hangover. If you think about it, let's say in a sales role, and let's say you are selling houses and let's say you're doing pretty good, you're selling houses, but let's say you get rid of alcohol and spending your weekends, connecting to other people and people who want to sell their house. And then during the week, you're not hungover. Think of how much more sales you can make when you're not hungover. So, in my first 6 months, because my career was so important to me and growing my fitness career, I had so much more time. And with that time, I could get more clients, grow my social media. And with that, I would save more money because I'm not spending money on alcohol. And I've always wanted to, I don't come from any money. No one's ever helped me in my life. The only person that's helped me was the relationship where I was in my drinking days. And I've always wanted to be extremely independent. And sobriety is the only way I could get there. So that's one of the reasons that I really chose sobriety, is because I needed to be financially dependent on myself. And I couldn't do that if I kept drinking, because if I wrote down what my life would look like in 5 years if I kept drinking, I would lose my business. And that's how I was financially holding myself up. And I didn't want to drink and go back to my relationship and be dependent on him anymore. So that was obviously mental health is big, but I really wanted to be financially independent. I wanted to have my own business, and I knew I couldn't do that if I kept drinking. The My relationships with my friends have always been pretty good, but in sobriety, I think I've learned a different kind of relationship. Now I'm this someone who someone comes to that they want to share what they're going through and get my feedback versus the girl, hey, do you want to go to a party and do you have party drugs? That's what I provided. Our friendship was the alcohol, the party drugs, and buying people shots. And my friendships have grown so much, and I love that you touched on that. I mean, mostly all of my friends now in sobriety, I are friends that I've created in my sobriety. Are yours?
Some, yes, half and half. Half and half, yeah, I would say. And the friends that I have, we were able to deepen our relationship because our relationship was based on more than just going out and drinking. And I mean, like I shared in previous episodes, I thought that like it was going to be so different. I was going to go out, I was going to be the sober one, everybody else was going to be drinking. And like none of my friends really cared about that. Like we were going out, they would have one or two drinks, and it made me realize like I was the problem. I was the friend that like caused the party, and like they didn't never cared that much about the party. They cared about me, which was really nice. So that was definitely something with my friendships that I noticed. And I mean, career wise too, like when I went into sobriety, I didn't feel like I had a purpose. I didn't have any career goals or anything. I had no idea what I was walking into. And I could have, even at 6 months, I could have never predicted that this is where my career would take me. And that's the great thing about, if you're coming into the program and you're on day one and you can't even imagine what's to come. I know that that might be scary, but it's also really, really beautiful when you look at it from a different perspective, is that your life can be anything. And I started looking at every single area. And for example, when it came to love, I had no idea what I wanted to write for that, because like I couldn't even imagine what my life could look like in that area. I was just so kind of defeated in it. But I think that when we're looking at it from a perspective of, oh, like I'm never gonna find somebody, I'm not gonna, I don't have anyone right now. I started kind of thinking about like, I don't have anyone right now, but that's great because my partner can be anyone. My partner can be this amazing person that I can't even imagine in my mind, right? And that's with every area. That's with like friends, like, oh, like I can't even imagine making friends at this age. And I had no idea that I was going to make some of the best girlfriends in my sobriety at 30 years old. I had no idea. And I was pleasantly surprised. Uh, Same with family relationships. I had no idea that I would be able to have good relationships with certain people in my family that I never saw. So when you're on day one and you're doing this exercise, because that's going to be the first exercise that you do when you join SoberFitGirl, it's not a reason to freak out when you can't think of how your life might change in sobriety. It's exciting. It's exciting to know that your life can be anything, that you're taking your power back, and every single area that you're looking at that you might not have the answers to, you're going to be able to fill in those blanks as a year comes, as 5 years come. Like, I'm not at 5 years yet, and I have no idea what's going to come at 5 years. I couldn't have predicted what would happen at 3 years, right? So the most important thing for us is to focus on what it would look like if we kept drinking on day one. Because the most powerful thing that we can do is visualize who we don't want to be anymore. That has been really, really powerful for me at the start of my sobriety, and what fueled me to get to wanting long-term sobriety is I had no idea what sobriety would bring, but I sure as hell was done trying to make drinking work. I was sure as hell was done trying to make that relationship work, and to I've seen enough, basically. Like I didn't want to see any more of what drinking was going to bring into my life. So it's okay if you can't fill in the side of the exercise where what your life can look like in sobriety. It's enough for you to fill out what your life would look like if you kept drinking. Because my favorite thing that we say too is sobriety is scary, but living the same life and nothing changing was definitely scarier. And you get to that point. And when you get to that point and you sign up for Sober Fit Girl, your motivation comes from everything that you no longer want to be. And it's like it feels like you're getting to know a new person in sobriety. So yeah, you might not know exactly what's going to happen. And another thing is like different areas will call for attention at different times. So I had no idea what order things were going to happen for me. We don't know that. We don't know what life can necessarily bring. However, let's say that you are 3 or 4 months in and you're messaging us and you're telling us how much you hate your job, you hate your career. You just need a change there because when we quit drinking, we stop tolerating things. Let's say that you're a year in and you're realizing that your relationship is not making you happy. It's not the one. It's not the person that you're with is not growing with you. These are all things that you might not predict and can seem scary. However, when you're going into sobriety, the more momentum you're building in sobriety, I feel like the less scared you become over time to try new things and to let go of what no longer is serving you, because you did that with alcohol and you saw the benefits of that. So it becomes less scary, this idea of like starting over and letting yourself be surprised with what can come into your life because you're doing it. So you don't have to have the answers on day one of like what is going to happen for you. None of us could have predicted what was going to happen. And we still don't know. Like we were just talking about this, how much has happened in a year. And I know, Kat, you were saying we feel like we lived 10 different lives in 1 year. So just let yourself be surprised and go into it. And don't put too much pressure on yourself to get every single area of your life uh, like where you want it to be. Like certain things will come into your life later on, and that's okay, you know?
I think it's so important too to address why we stay sober, because people have come to me, well, your life is great now. Why don't you drink again? And I got sober because I wanted a better life, and that's why I stay sober. And all of these gifts I've received in my sobriety of why I keep adding to my why I choose to keep being sober is because of all these areas of my life have gotten better. And if I drink again, I know I will lose all of the things that I've created in my sobriety. If I drink again, I will lose my business. If I drink again, more than likely at some point I will lose my friends. My mental health will immediately go to shit. So I think it's so important too that regardless of where you are at on your sober journey, to keep touching base with your why statement Because if I drink, I can see very clearly I am not delusional. If I drink again, I know where it will take me and the things I will lose. So, 1 year, each year, or however you want to reflect as you get more and more sober, write down the gifts of sobriety and write down, for example, let's say you're like we were just sharing, so much has happened in the last year of my life. So many blessings have happened, so many lessons, so many great things in all areas of my life. And it's truly because I'm sober today. And I don't want to lose those things that I have received in sobriety. So there is no end point to defining your why either. I think you could be 20 years sober and be extremely unhappy. And I could see why someone would be unhappy if they're not reflecting on the gifts and also taking action and putting themselves out there. You could be fully sober and be in a miserable career and not making these changes in your sobriety to find that joy and to find that happiness is holding you back from receiving these. This is why community is so important,
Mm-hmm.
is because it supports me in making these changes, in pushing past the fears and choosing faith and, you know, getting out of my comfort zone and leaving a relationship or moving to a different city. I couldn't do any of these things, one, without being sober, and two, without community to support me. Because in sobriety, we are always making hard decisions. I mean, even starting this podcast was scary for us, and we're doing it, but because we have support of our community, it's like, yeah, like do that, and support of each other. So it's really important to be around people who are going to encourage you to keep increasing your baseline in sobriety, keep putting yourself out there, getting out of your comfort zone, and trying new things. And again, this is why I stay sober every day, is because I'm obsessed with the things I've received in sobriety and I don't want to lose those things.
Yeah, and I think that, like I said, I go back to my why at all times because if I ever let go of remembering exactly how bad things would get, then I would definitely be closer to a drink. And I love how you said that our why can change throughout the years and we can add on to it. And that's the beauty of it. And that's what I mean when I say that if you have nothing to write on day one, you're going to have so much more to write as the time goes on. And that's why going back and redefining your why, oh my gosh, redefining your why. If you have moments where you do touch the stove, where you're feeling like you're in a funk, we always say go back and redefine your why in those moments, because when we start losing hope in ourselves, when we stop trusting the process, that's when it can become dangerous for us and we become closer to a drink, is when we're forgetting why we're doing the things that we are doing. And if you're listening and you feel like there is just no hope for you and you feel like you're completely lost, you don't know what life can look like for you in sobriety, let's start at what your life will look like if you keep drinking. Because I love how you also shared, Kat, that fear in a way is what got you sober, the fear of what your life would look like if you kept drinking. That was also what fueled me to get sober and focusing on my life a year and 5 and 10 years from now if I kept drinking. And that's enough. So,
Fear keeps me sober too.
yeah. Oh,
I'm
absolutely.
scared, terrified of what would happen if I drink. And I think that's why you and I are also sober and happy, is because we are doing something daily to keep ourselves sober. For me, I'm terrified to drink. And that fear keeps me in a daily routine, because the farther you swim away from the shore, the harder it is to get back. In my sobriety, I have, have lost, I've gotten close to a drink, and that scared me because I'm, again, so terrified to drink. And the thing that I was missing in that, when I was farther out the shore, closer to a drink, was my daily consistency in my routine. So, I mean, for me, I'm grateful for that fear. I'm grateful for that fear of drinking again.
Yeah. And I think that when you're feeling like that fear is going away and you're like, the what if thoughts are about to win, that's when it's time to redefine that why.